So let's say you just booked a flight, Chicago to Dallas, 2.5 hours. You paid $180 for the ticket. Where does that money actually go? Because the airline didn't pocket $180. They had to pay for fuel, they had to pay the pilots and the flight attendants, they had to pay the airport just to use the gate. They had to pay for the plane itself, which, by the way, they probably don't even own. And after all of that, the airline made about $7 off of you. 7. Not 7%, $7. That is roughly what the global airline industry earns per passenger. It's barely enough to buy a coffee. So where did the other $173 go? Before a single passenger steps on board, the airline is already spending money on the aircraft itself. And this is the part most people don't think about. The plane has a cost even when it's just sitting there. A new Boeing 737, the most common jet you'll see at an American airport, lists for over $100 million. Most airlines don't buy their planes outright, they lease them. And a typical lease on a new 737 runs around $400,000 a month. That's the payment whether the plane flies 10 times that day or 0. On top of the lease, there's insurance on the aircraft. There are maintenance reserves, money the airline sets aside every month for the inevitable heavy repairs down the road. Think of it like a car payment plus car insurance plus saving for a new transmission, except the car costs $100 million. So before the plane even starts its engines on our Chicago to Dallas flight, the airline has already spent money just having it exist that day. Now we get to the stuff that actually makes the plane move. Fuel is one of the biggest costs in aviation. A 737 burns roughly 850 gallons of jet fuel per hour. On a 2.5-hour flight to Dallas, that's over 2,000 gallons. At recent prices, the fuel bill for this one flight comes out to somewhere around $5,000, just the gas. And the tricky part is, airlines never know exactly what fuel is going to cost from one month to the next. When oil prices spiked in 2008, fuel became the single biggest reason airlines were going bankrupt. Some airlines try to lock in prices ahead of time. It's called hedging. But it's essentially placing a bet on where oil prices are going, and that bet doesn't always work out. Then there are the people, and there are more of them than you'd think. On the plane, you've got 2 pilots and usually 4 or 5 flight attendants. But on the ground, there's a whole operation running that you never see. Gate agents checking you in, baggage handlers loading and unloading, ramp workers pushing the plane back from the gate, mechanics who inspected the aircraft that morning before anyone boarded. And here's what most people don't realize. For US domestic flights, labor is actually a bigger expense than fuel now. It's over 1/3 of total operating costs. Fuel used to be number one, and in a lot of people's minds it still is. But wages have gone up significantly, especially for pilots after the pandemic, and fuel prices have come down from their peaks. So right now, the people cost more than the gas. So we've covered the plane, the fuel, and the people, but the bill keeps going. Every time an airplane lands at an airport, the airline pays a landing fee. These are based on the weight of the aircraft, and for a 737 at a major airport like O'Hare, you're looking at roughly $2,000 just to touch the runway. Then there's the gate. Airlines pay rent to use the gate your plane is parked at. They pay for the jet bridge that connects the plane to the terminal. They pay the airport authority for the right to operate there at all. And there are fees you'd never even think about. Every airplane flying over the United States is tracked and managed by air traffic control, and airlines pay navigation charges for that service. The plane is literally being billed as it crosses the sky. Then there's ground handling, the people and equipment that service the plane between flights. Catering, which is the food and drinks loaded on board, even if it's just water and pretzels on a domestic flight. Cleaning crews who come through the cabin during the turnaround. Each one of these is a separate bill. None of them are huge on their own, but they stack up fast. And this is the thing about running an airline. No single cost is the problem. It's that there are dozens of them, and they all show up on every single flight. So now let's add it all up for our Chicago to Dallas flight and see what's left. We've got fuel at around $5,000. Labor, and this isn't just the crew on the plane, this is every person involved in making this flight happen, runs over $5,000 as well. Aircraft ownership costs, whether that's lease payments or depreciation, add a few thousand more. Then landing fees, gate charges, navigation fees, maintenance reserves, catering, ground handling. All in, the direct operating cost of this one 2.5-hour flight lands somewhere around $15,000 to $17,000. Now our plane has about 160 seats, If the average passenger is paying around $180, including any extras, a full plane brings in roughly $29,000. That leaves about $12,000 in margin, which sounds okay until you realize that's not profit. That $12,000 has to cover everything the airline does that isn't directly attached to this one flight. Corporate headquarters, IT systems, the booking platform, marketing, customer service call centers, training programs, legal compliance. All of that gets spread across every flight the airline operates. When you layer it all in, the average net profit margin for the global airline industry is about 3.5%. 3.5% on nearly $1 trillion in revenue. And that 3.5% assumes everything goes right. In the airline business, everything almost never goes right. Let's say our Chicago to Dallas flight gets delayed 2 hours because of weather. That delay costs the airline over $12,000 in direct expenses alone: crew overtime, aircraft sitting idle, gate fees stacking up. The passengers who miss their connections need to be rebooked on other flights, and those seats were supposed to generate revenue for someone else. Some passengers might need hotel vouchers and meal vouchers if they're stuck overnight. And the plane itself has a schedule to keep. That 737 was supposed to fly from Dallas to Phoenix after it landed. Now it's 2 hours late, which means the Phoenix flight is delayed too. And the passengers on the Phoenix flight who are connecting to Portland, they're missing that connection now. One delay in Chicago just created problems in 3 different cities. That's the domino effect. Airlines operate their fleets on extremely tight schedules because every minute a plane sits on the ground is a minute it's not generating revenue. A single plane might fly 5 or 6 flights in a day. One disruption early in the morning can ripple all the way to the last flight at midnight. And then there are the seats that nobody bought. Airlines fly with an average load factor of about 84%, which means roughly 1 in 6 seats is empty on any given flight. The plane burns the same fuel whether there are 160 people on it or 130. The crew costs the same, the landing fees are the same, but with 30 empty seats, the airline just lost thousands in potential revenue, and the margin that was already razor thin might now be gone entirely. This is why running an airline is considered one of the hardest businesses in the world. The costs are enormous, the margins are tiny, and the things that can go wrong, weather, mechanical issues, air traffic delays, fuel spikes, labor disputes, are mostly outside the airline's control. So with margins that thin and that many things that can go wrong, how do airlines actually survive? Because here's the part that changes how you think about the whole business. Your ticket price isn't really where airlines make their money anymore. In 2024, airlines worldwide collected $148 billion in what's called ancillary revenue. That's everything that isn't the base ticket price. Baggage fees, seat selection, priority boarding, extra legroom, onboard food and drinks, and the biggest one of all, loyalty programs and co-branded credit cards. The 5 largest U.S. airlines, Alaska, American, Delta, Southwest, and United, generated $28 billion in 2024 just from their loyalty programs. Most of that came from credit card partnerships. Every time you swipe a Delta SkyMiles credit card to buy groceries, Delta gets paid. Every time someone signs up for a new American Airlines card, American gets a fee. It doesn't matter if those people ever fly. The airline is making money from the card itself. And this has gotten so big that for some airlines, the extras now generate more revenue than the actual tickets. Frontier Airlines makes 62% of its revenue from ancillary fees. More than half their income has nothing to do with the fare you paid to get on the plane. And here's what makes all of this work as a system. Airfares have actually gotten significantly cheaper over the past few decades when you adjust for inflation. Tickets today cost roughly $200 less in real terms than they did 30 years ago. Fares went down. But spending on extras went up. The passengers who pay for checked bags, better seats, and priority boarding are essentially subsidizing the cheaper base fares for everyone else. So when you look at the full picture, the fuel, the crew, the fees, the overhead, the razor-thin margin, the constant risk of disruption, the flight itself is almost a break-even proposition. The airline isn't really making money by flying you from Chicago to Dallas. It's making money from the credit card in your wallet, the bag you checked, and the extra 3 inches of legroom you paid $40 for. The global airline industry moves 5 billion passengers a year. It generates nearly $1 trillion in revenue. And after paying for the planes, the fuel, the people, the airports, the food, the technology, the maintenance, and everything else, The profit that's left over works out to about $7 per passenger. Your flight was never really about the ticket. The ticket just gets you on the plane. Everything else, the bag, the seat, the card in your wallet, that's where the business actually is. And if you've ever wondered how long-haul flights work, where the math is completely different, burning fuel for 15 or 18 hours straight, crossing entire oceans, that's a whole other story. Let us know if you want that one.